This is an Audio Wool original.
This episode of Frightday is brought to you by Gates of Hell Chipotle Hot Sauce by Frightday. Bold chipotle flavor blended with habanero peppers for just the right burn. Kissed with garlic and passion fruit. Zero human blood, like none at all. Visit shop.frightday.com before the first batch disappears.
Hey guys, thanks for listening. If you'd like to support us, go to patreon.com/frightday.
Cryptids and conspiracies.
My dad was so upset about the swearing. I'm like, Dad,
Yeah,
I'm
we
really
went pretty
sorry.
hard.
I was really hopped up on a lot of caffeine, and I mean, I'm not going to be much different today.
Oh.
But I am going to try and hold back on the F-bombs. Really reserve them to make sure they land. They have a significant impact.
Have some
Because I
weight
feel like
to
they're
it.
losing their value.
Yeah, you've been dropping quite a bit. Yeah.
Law of supply and demand.
You're learning.
Supply's way up, demand's way down.
People don't go give a fucking shit.
Yep, there you go. There you go.
Damn it.
Contrary to Byron's wishes, I'd like to start today by giving a quick Cliff Notes
I'm fine with that.
of the last episode, because we had some feedback that it was a bit of a confusing timeline. And, you know, this is a confusing timeline. There's going to be a visual in the show notes of this episode at Frightday.com. Here it is in a
All the
nutshell.
stuff you were texting me at like 6:30 in the morning.
I mean, I assume I was texting it to you all night and at some point in the morning, and then when I was sitting at the DMV. And number one for our Cliff Notes from last week, Al Bielek is a Nazi sympathizer. That's number one.
Okay.
Everybody
Get that out
remember
of the
that.
way. Yeah.
Very important. Al Bielek was born in 1927. He was an electrical engineer. He joined the Navy. In the 70s, he met Ivan T. Sanderson, who was like fun guy who wrote about crazy weird stuff.
And these are all facts.
Like Charles Berlitz, yes. He was interested in the Philadelphia experiment and in Montauk. In fact, in 1985, he even visited Montauk.
And this is before the movie came out.
Yeah. He was very interested in it.
Okay.
He wasn't sure why, though. It was just like, oh, because he was interested in a lot of weird stuff, all right? Then he watched the movie The Philadelphia Experiment in 1989 and goes, oh, wow, now I remember. It broke loose the repressed memories. And then Preston Nichols, who we're going to get into today, helped him uncover.
Are we talking about facts?
Yes, helped him uncover.
Are you sure?
His repressed memories. Okay, so helped him uncover what he believes to be his repressed memories.
And that would be
That he was first born as Edward Cameron, not in 1927, but in the 19-teens. He had a stepbrother named Duncan, who was also friends with Preston and helped him uncover his memories. There's little to no discussion of how those fellas all met, but I believe it was through Ivan T. Sanderson. There is a horrible quality video, which we will have linked in the show notes
Wait,
of this
what
episode.
happened to his brother, by the way?
Duncan?
Yeah.
Duncan helped him uncover his memories.
But
we're going to stick with that for right now.
Didn't Duncan jump through time as well?
In those uncovered memories, he found out that they actually had joined the Navy after getting PhDs in physics and were involved in the Philadelphia experiment, which then connected to the Montauk experiment. And his brother Duncan had jumped off into 1983 twice, and he had only jumped off into 1983 once.
Okay.
All right. This 1989 video, November 1989, was filmed shortly after Preston helped Al uncover what he believed to be his repressed memories. And it's like this weird, in some living room, the lighting is awful. The quality is awful. And it's got Preston Nichols sitting in the middle with...
Thank Preston, Al, and Cameron for being here tonight. Really, I mean, for all of us eccentrics, we are thoroughly pleased to hear about the Rainbow Project, the Philadelphia Experiment, the Phoenix Project, all that good stuff. And so I guess you can all take it the way you want, you know, as one after another, while he puts on his sunglasses. And this is really, I think, a memorable event. And so you guys can take on the project, and thanks for being here.
It's a little bit like Jabba the Hutt.
Yeah.
Like he's sitting
got a
there and
chained up
yeah,
Bielek to-
it's worth watching because it gives you a frame for a lot of this stuff. But after that, then he started giving speeches at MUFON. He wrote a book with Brad Steiger, which I've got here. the rest is history. But to summarize what I was
It's
trying
also past.
and the future,
Yeah.
the story that Al uncovers, to summarize last week, he and his brother, Philadelphia experiment, all of this stuff happened. He went on to have more adventures after the Philadelphia experiment, but then he was brainwiped and thrown back into the body of a baby in 1927, and that's where he became Al Bielek. Now, a fairly rational question one might ask is, why did he get brainwiped? Why didn't they just kill him?
Or is brainwiping a real thing?
No, that's not a
That's
question.
number one.
That's not a question.
I've got it on my paper right here.
Nope, we're suspending disbelief for that.
Okay.
He's not entirely sure why he got brainwiped, but here is his best guess. From memories he was able to put together, he and Duncan, remember how they were tipped off not to go back to Pearl Harbor because Pearl Harbor was going to get bombed?
Yeah, the big false flag to get us into World War II.
Exactly. So on the way back to Philly, John Van Neumann showed them this free energy device in some underground layer. Apparently, it was this small machine on steel rails, and it could produce 3.1 megawatts of power, which is a lot, I guess.
Are you sure it wasn't just a cartoon miner on a track doing the little whoop whoop?
I mean, that would be
creating power?
amazing, but no, it wasn't.
Okay.
This device, however, was destroyed the next year when the New World Order decided that free energy was bad and we're going to go with nuclear power. That's what we're going to go with.
yeah.
Yep. And then after all the Philly stuff happened and Edward's still working for the military, by the way, just to be clear, this is Edward in the form of Edward because it was before he was sent back to be Edward in the form of Al. In 1946, he started saying, we really shouldn't have destroyed that. That was a really bad idea. This is kind of shitty. We probably shouldn't be doing nuclear power for everything. I think that's a bad idea. And he started looking more into the free energy machine, started becoming a real squeaky wheel, very vocal within the Navy about, hey, why'd we squash this program? He got too squeaky. And the government said, okay, we can't risk exposing this, but the Earth... Oh, you're not going to like this, Byron.
Oh, no.
The Earth has 40-year biorhythms.
Oh, okay, and do you want to elaborate?
The 40-year biorhythms are divided into two sub-20-year biorhythms.
And what does that mean?
It means that our time is tied in 20-year chunks.
Oh, that's why it took 2 chunks for them to...
In order to stabilize our current timeline, they could not remove Al from it until at least 2003, which would have been 20 years
Past
after the
83.
1983.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that totally makes
So
all
that
the
makes perfect
in the
sense. Yeah,
world.
they couldn't kill him yet. So on
Okay.
July 2nd, 1947, of note, mere weeks before Roswell,
Sure.
they moved him to 1983, where they employed technology to throw him back into 1927 as Al Bielek. And then Al Bielek went through his life, became an electrical engineer, met Ivan T. Sanderson, watched this movie, and said, okay, this is what happened to me. So there's the story. I hope that makes more sense. I am very sorry for being confusing. What's interesting about his story when he was transferred back to be Al Bielek, it's very similar to Damien from The Omen. He says that he was moved back into a baby's body, not a fetus's body, all right? And not to get into religious political discussions of the
Wait.
distinction between the two, but he was
Starts
9
at
months old.
conception, Kelly.
Okay, right. Well, he was 9 months old. The weird thing about this is he says when his mother, or whom he thought was his mother, was on her deathbed and was senile, she said to him, "The baby's dead, isn't it?"
Oh, and that tipped him off into believing that he once had a brother.
Well, no. So the baby that his mother and father had died,
So they're saying that he...
and Damien style, he was switched into
Gotta
a body.
tell you, that's a stretch.
Yep, switched into the body. That became Al Bielek, okay? Now, when Al gets into more detail about his life between 1927 and 1989, and keep in mind, we've got this weird overlap period, right? Because between 1927 and 1947, Al and Edward
That's one Earth's biorhythm.
are both in the same timeline.
Yeah.
We got Al as a young man / baby, and we got Edward as a gentleman.
An adult man.
Yep. But as Al, between 1927 and 1989, he was just this normal contractor, electrical engineer, traveled around, has some vague memories of weird things. But when Preston helped uncover repressed memories about Philadelphia, he also uncovered memories about Project Phoenix and Montauk. These memories were suppressed via brainwiping as well.
Did they get into the process of brainwiping? Is that something you're going to get into eventually? Like how it's done? Okay, so you didn't even care about that. You don't ask that question?
That's technology that Al was not a part of operating.
I heard Al's excuse.
He was just held
bel-
victim to it.
He believes that it was an injection.
Yeah.
And also, when they asked the question, I'm not trying to
I think
shit
the
on
injection was actually just to kill him, like to euthanize him.
kill him
Kill Edward him.
before a soul transfer.
Yes, exactly.
Well, souls don't
Exactly.
exist.
Well, I do believe in souls, but I'm not sure how.
Wow. Okay. Well, the brainwiping technology was something that I've never found that he had a good, clear excuse. Like
He didn't
answer on.
because, see, the reason he has an understanding of the whole time travel stuff on
Because
the
he's an
Eldridge
electrical
was,
engineer.
and he was running it.
Yeah.
He was running it. This, he just got zapped.
And Sanderson wouldn't feel like, or von Neumann.
Yeah,
is
von
the guy,
Neumann,
and he
yep.
wouldn't have shared this information.
No, he couldn't because he knew that they were going to have to zap him, and he didn't want to get zapped too.
I gotta tell you.
For many years, when he was working as a contractor, things were going on to him that he wasn't aware of until later. Okay. As I listened to the video that explains, it's really the only audio I've ever heard, the only interview about detail regarding his life as Al during that period. It's also where he uncovers being a Nazi sympathizer. But before he gets to that,
Okay.
he's explaining that he's going through this series of jobs and he keeps talking about getting fired.
Blockbuster.
Fired.
GameStop.
No. It's like contractor, electrical engineer contracting, but he's getting fired all the time.
Okay.
Admitting to being fired.
Quiznos.
And it's,
Schlotsky's.
well, it's as though he's like, well, they've, they did this and then they did this
I
and then
don't
they
put
did this.
enough cheese on the
Exactly.
I refuse to put 4 slices only.
So pretty much.
Yeah.
But it turns out there might be another explanation for why he was getting
Tell me why.
fired.
Yeah.
Let me start with an explanation that the Earth has a frequency that emanates from the center of it. And I actually think this is real, Byron.
And we're still on spherical Earth.
Yes.
Okay.
So literally, it's like the Earth is a giant electrical circuit. And right now, the frequency that comes out is 7.83 hertz. Now, this was not even predicted until 1952. Like, this isn't Kelly's. I'll tell you when we get into the crazy shit, okay?
Sure.
But, like, this is real, all right?
Do you think we could we generate power from the rotation of the Earth?
I mean, it's very, very little. I mean, we would have to do some magnification stuff. I'm sure somebody's working on it. Maybe that's where free energy came from.
That's what
Fuck
I'm
if I know.
thinking.
I don't
Okay.
understand. See, there I went again. I don't understand anything about that kind of science. But, all right, so real life, frequency of Earth is 7.83 hertz. Crazy interpretation. Humans have a frequency that matches the Earth's frequency from the time they were born because the frequency of the Earth evolves over time. It does change slightly. The reason people feel so off kilter, like when they time travel, people like get sick.
Yeah.
It's
Of
because
course. Shut up. Don't do that to me.
Yeah.
You just tricked me into thinking
I
that
did.
time travel's real.
it is. When they land in a new time,
Okay.
their body is at a frequency
Sure.
that no longer matches the Earth they're standing on.
Okay.
Okay.
That makes
All right. So Al, unbeknownst to him, was undergoing time travel after time travel after time travel, and they were all little, very little, but he was being Dark City'd, like
Never saw
almost every day. Okay, Dark City. This nefarious group operates while everyone else is asleep, and like it's kind of like time freezes, and then they go do their shit, and then they restart time.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, I saw it a long time ago. Forgive me if that's off, but that's the general concept that I think it is, which is what I'm basing this whole
I hope
analogy
they focus. That's what they debunk. That's what our listeners debunk
is that I was
your
incorrectly
3 sentences.
referencing Dark City.
All right.
Okay.
Everyone knows that Keith Sutherland's character.
Yep.
Okay.
I digress.
You ever been to Earth Frequency Festival in Australia?
No, but I love Australia. It's where Bluey's from.
It's a music, arts, and lifestyle and environmental festival in Queensland. I love Australia. Maybe they know something you don't know.
Australia's like Canada, but with way scarier creatures that can kill you. So this is why Al was out of sorts and probably why he kept getting fired. He was 11 years off with his rebirth as Al to begin with. Okay, so that's problem 1. But problem 2 is he was being time moved and brain swiped sometimes daily.
I keep getting fired from the convenience store because I'm repeatedly being micro time traveled.
Yes.
Okay, well, let's keep on rolling.
When he was still conducting very thorough, in-depth interviews, he was still uncovering some of this. Preston was still helping him unpack these memories, okay? He did recall, as Al, in 1956, he was in Hawaii doing some electrical engineering contractor work, as he spent his career doing. He had a brief encounter with somebody that was Mark Hamill's brother or Mark Hamill himself. And this gets, this is where the ability to interview Al would be very helpful, aside from the fact that I never want to talk to a Nazi.
I guarantee you've talked to a Nazi.
I probably have. That makes me nauseous. Wow. Some people recount his story as meeting Mark Hamill's brother, and some people recount it as him meeting Mark Hamill himself. Now, what's tricky about this is Mark Hamill in 1956. Byron, what was Mark Hamill's birthday?
Oh, I would imagine it was somewhere close to September 25th of 1951.
Meeting Mark Hamill as an adult man in 1956 would have been challenging.
But the thing is, what we did, he was actually reverse body swapped back, and then he was
Okay, if you're going to make fun of me, at least make it logical.
Wait, are we saying that reverse body swapping isn't?
That's not what it's called, Byron. It's called age regression. It's a real thing.
Okay.
It's a real thing.
Does Mark remember this? Has anyone reached out to Mark Hamill?
No, Mark has no recollection of it, but I do believe that Mark Hamill's brother is highly interested, or at least was, I don't even know if his brother's still alive, was highly interested in some of these things.
Well, because he's probably a sci-fi guy.
Well, no, Mark Hamill was a sci-fi guy. Who knows what the hell his brother did?
Well,
Can't
then
make
why
assumptions.
why are you telling me that he does have interest in this?
Well, there is some crazy story that Mark Hamill himself was once Duncan Cameron's roommate.
Okay, come on.
Now, this is a sidebar. Don't feel like this is a timeline you need to be following. This is just a sidebar. So nobody worry about how this fits in time-wise. There's this super weird Mark Hamill Star Wars connection. All right? Some people make an argument that goes so far as to say that George Lucas pulled a lot of his material for Star Wars from the real-life Philadelphia Montauk history.
I've never had the feeling that I have right now, which is that I want to leave the room.
I feel like you've had that feeling a lot.
No, this is the first time where I was like, yeah, this is absurd and I don't want to have a part of this.
Yeah. Well, weird enough is that Preston Nichols worked as a sound engineer on some of Lucas's movies.
No, he didn't.
Yeah. And supposedly contributed to Star Wars as a way to get some information out there, kind of like Stanley Kubrick.
No.
And The Shining.
The guy who speaks from his belly is not...
Well, maybe when he was working with George Lucas, he was not speaking from his belly.
Maybe. Okay. Well...
It's important to know that this is some of the fringe narrative surrounding Montauk and the Philadelphia experiment, is that there's a Star Wars tie-in. And of course, I love a good Star Wars tie-in. I can't verify that any of this is really true, but I will say that this idea of running into a fella in Hawaii that changed the course of things for Al Bielek was significant. Okay, so Byron, we're now re-entering the important timeline. 1956, Al Bielek runs into this guy. They have this weird conversation and then has this slight, weird missing time event that night. Nothing major, just a short bit of time. And
like
he
maybe
thought,
falling asleep?
Yeah, possibly. But back in these days, Al's very honest about it. They were all drinkers. They drank a lot. What do you do in Hawaii? You go and you drink. A bunch.
Tiki drinks.
Tiki drinks.
Sweet.
I love a tiki drink.
Liquor.
Wish I had a tiki drink right now.
The core.
As he would find out later in his life, shortly after that encounter and that slight sense of missing time, he became involved in the Montauk Project. He was probably recruited to be involved in the Montauk Project because he had already fallen into the Montauk Project when he jumped off the boat in 1943 and fell into 1983.
Yeah.
Okay? But now he's being recruited for it, and there's a lot of work going on there. This is the Phoenix Project, which evolves into the Montauk Project. Lots of connections with MK Ultra. We've got tons of crazy science that's going on here. But hold on, pause. I really do think we can prove that Nichols was a sound engineer for The Empire Strikes Back.
Does he have like an IMDb credit? And what does that entail? How many sound engineers were there on that project?
I mean, probably a ton.
Yeah.
Well, Mark Hamill's father was naval intelligence.
More people are involved in the Navy than...
No, not Navy, naval intelligence. The Department of Naval Intelligence is arguably the department that has held all of the secret information about the recent UFO events for far longer than the public has known about them, okay, and probably has a lot of stuff that we still haven't heard about. But naval intelligence, very different from just the Navy. Apparently, Hamill's father was an officer with naval intelligence, and naval intelligence oversaw Montauk, Phoenix, obviously Philadelphia. Apparently, either Mark Hamill or his brother, whichever one they're constantly referencing, because it's very confusing which one they're talking about, but one of them was involved in Montauk. This was because, all right, X-Files. You're familiar with X-Files lore, right?
Yeah, sure.
So you know how it came to be that the MJ-12 group, essentially, in X-Files, their kids were recruited to be parts of what was going on. That's kind of the same narrative here. Okay?
I'm really excited for your vacation.
Because we know that Duncan Cameron and Edward Cameron, they were half-brothers, but their father, same father, was part of naval intelligence as well. Yeah. And that's why they got involved. Mark Hamill's dad was part of naval intelligence. That's why he got involved. Okay,
nepotism, every time.
Nepotism, but like really bad nepotism. Like nepotism's nice, I guess, if it gets you into Yale, and then people think that you're smart enough to be president, even though you have a lower intellect than a dead mouse.
Or if you want to pretend like you're on a rowing team.
That will help too, even if the school doesn't have one. And then you've got nepotism that apparently lands you in a really horrific government experiment.
That's true.
You win some, you lose some. But apparently Mark Hamill or Mark Hamill's brother lost some.
Well, and then also you win some, you lose some time as well.
That was really good.
Back to it.
That was really, really good.
People are getting shit-faced in Hawaii.
People are getting shit-faced in Hawaii. And unbeknownst to Al, he is being taken sometimes daily from wherever he is on his contracting jobs.
Back to his hotel
Back to Montauk.
Because he's wasted.
Back to Montauk to work on some of the electrical engineering of stuff there, and then placed back where he was, slightly off kilter. Those little transitions, frequency imbalances, missing time. So basically he was pulling all-nighters without knowing he was pulling all-nighters.
It's a Tyler Durden type, but...
Yeah, actually, that's a pretty good way to look at it.
Okay.
If Tyler Durden
Mayhem.
If Tyler Durden was not a figment of Edward Norton's imagination, it was actually real, then that would be like this.
But he's still not 100% aware of all of the time and things he's doing.
Well, he wasn't aware at the time that any of this was happening. Preston is just helping him unpack this. So keep in mind, as Al was doing all of these intensive interviews in like 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, especially in there, he's still unpacking stuff. He's still going through these sessions with Preston, getting new information. So there are like bits and pieces that come out. Now, granted, in 2000, he went and spoke at MUFON again, and he added a whole bunch of stuff then.
And you don't buy any of that.
I don't know. I still think that maybe the frequency had really gotten to him, or like we talked about last week, Havana syndrome. I mean, who knows what was going on?
I know they're technically two separate people, but now that I have this Fight Club thing in my head, I picture Preston Nichols as the Tyler Durden character.
Okay, Tyler Durden was a good-looking man.
Yeah, and Preston Nichols is the opposite of that. He looks like Don Vito.
And I do not think that Helena Bonham Carter would ever be romantically involved with Preston Nichols.
Honestly, who knows? He was possibly a sound engineer on Star Wars, I've heard.
Well, at least Empire Strikes Back. I'm going to have Sam verify that for me. I think Sam should, at a distance, be in charge of Star Wars authenticity reports in addition to weapons authenticity
reports. Instead of the shotgun noise, it's a pew pew.
Yes, that's exactly.
Perfect.
So I will refer to Sam for a Star Wars authenticity report on the Empire Strikes Back.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Also, no, I am not excusing it, but maybe that's why he became a Nazi.
No, that's an ingrained belief.
I just don't understand how you can be involved in the Navy and be any kind
should we clarify,
of a Nazi apologist.
Are we going to get deeper into what you heard him talk about?
You know what, Byron? We can play part of that interview.
We had helped engineer some of the Aryan groups, and Hitler was saying that he was all for the Aryans, and they bought that, and they were concerned with this, and they were able to time travel, and they saw that Hitler was going to be losing the war. And they were concerned about preserving the Aryan stock. So they offered to help Hitler. Certain conditions went with it. And this is one of the interesting aspects of it, because I got wind of this and got the information. And literally the information came from the horse's mouth.
Which horse?
The Pleiadians. He says, we know you have a Jewish problem, but there will be no rough stuff. There will be no harsh handling of the Jewish situation. It will be handled discreetly, calmly, and with kid gloves. He agreed to this, and so did the man who was the head of the SS.
Is that Himmler?
Himmler and Hitler both agreed to this, as well as the other top people. There was no hatred against the Jews in 1935, 36. They were inviting them to leave. And large numbers did leave Germany between 1933 and 1939, roughly 1 million, because the German population of Jewish people dropped from 1.55 million in 33 to 0.55 million in 1939, those records coming out of the World Almanacs for the various years. So the official records show that the Germans were encouraged to leave, and they did, and they took their money and their possessions with them up to 1939.
You mean the German Jews?
The German Jews. Right. After that, it changed.
But was Hitler even an Aryan himself?
No, he was not. Hitler was Jewish, believe it or not.
Yeah, I've come across that a time or two.
Oh, yes.
His mother, I believe, was Jewish.
His mother was Jewish, and his true father, his official name was Adolf Schicklgruber. That was his father's name. His true father was fully Jewish. I was a Rothschild.
Have you ever been able to corroborate that with anybody? Or is that just some research?
That's some of the research I've done. It is corroborated by some researchers, but I don't think there's any way of corroborating that on a hard, cold, factual basis.
There's not much about his parents.
Very little.
Sure.
I've seen some of the pictures of some of his artwork that survived. I don't know whether the actual artwork has survived or not, but many photos were made of his artwork. Actually, he wasn't a half-bad artist. I've seen much worse.
Sounds like he was just a brilliant man who knew how to take advantage of everything that was in front of him.
He was a very brilliant man in terms of...
Until the end, of course, when he became
Well, he
insane.
went off the deep end at some point, but before that... Well, there's one thing I want to add, yes. The Palladians pulled out of their backing in 1941, and they just withdrew. I've not been able to get a hardcore reason why, but it was also known that in 1941, medically, Hitler was in sorry shape. It was stated by his doctors and by historical reference that he developed a bad case of syphilis, possibly a terminal case of syphilis, and they didn't expect him to last much longer, but he did manage to last a lot longer. Quite a few years, in fact, until 1983. How he got the syphilis cured, nobody knows. But it was also noted by...
Wait, did you say till 1983?
93.
93.
93.
Okay.
He did not die in the bunkers after the war.
That almost went right past me now.
He did not die in the bunkers. This is well documented, and is coming out of secret records that are now being released from the United States. Yeah. He had a double. It was his driver, who looked a great deal like him, and it was someone in the family. It could pass easily for Hitler.
So where did he actually move to?
He went to South America first, Argentina, then he went to Antarctica, where they had the bases already set up, and then eventually he went to the United States. He was in Portland, Oregon for a number of years, then he moved after 1960 to Arizona, to one of the small communities up north of Phoenix, not Flagstaff, but Prescott.
So did he enjoy a comfortable life, you think?
Apparently he enjoyed a comfortable life thereafter. There are many aspects of this one can speculate on. Why was he allowed to leave?
Yeah.
And why was he allowed to go to the U.S.? Why was he never treated as a war criminal? One would have to speculate and say he obviously, in the eyes of someone, was not a war criminal, i.e. he did the job that he was set up to do. This, of course, was going to tread on an awful lot of people's toes, but you have to look it back from history, as it were, and get away from the close perspective and get a more distant perspective and find out who benefited from World War II.
I'd say the bankers.
Exactly. They set it up. They wanted it. Now, the problem was, of course, after the war went on, it got to other people were involved in the side issues, the concentration camps, and all of that is a very sticky mess and a sticky wicket. And how many died in the camps, didn't die in the camps, I don't even want to get into, because it's a very, very sticky and controversial mess. The claims and counterclaims, everybody knows this, everybody's read it.
There's just a lot of people, basically.
Yeah, a lot of people died in the camps without any question. We'll leave it that way.
Well, and I don't want to excuse the things he said. But maybe this is Joe Rogan company you keep.
Are you saying that Preston and Duncan were Nazis?
I think once he entered the conspiracy community, it's very easy to latch on to other ideas and continue yes-anding.
You know, Byron, you raise an important point, because within the conspiracy theory realm, this is a thing that I have become more hyper aware of as time goes on. you have to be very careful and very clear. And really, I forgot my most important rule, which is double check they aren't a Nazi before you dig in. I mean, anti-Semitism is pretty rampant in the conspiracy theory universe.
Even the code word globalist just means Jew.
In the world that you are constantly
Yes,
researching?
when people are talking about the Illuminati, the New World Order, the globalists, they're always talking about, even though some of the families aren't even Jewish, they will find a way to spin that family is Jewish. Is it 7 families that run the world?
The Rockefellers weren't Jewish, were they?
Technically.
According to the crazies.
Yeah, they are.
Okay.
Once you start believing in flat Earth, you start believing in all these different tangential beliefs, you know?
Yeah, I guess so.
And then all roads lead to the Jewish question and
Which I
Holocaust
don't
denial.
understand. I'm actually, like, real talk, I'm actually having some very serious conversations with a friend of mine about this recently because I feel like it is my job as a human and as a parent to make my children more aware of these problems rather than, like, not contributing to the problems is step A.
Yeah.
But then being aware that those problems are there so that you can actively engage against them or be empathetic towards those who are suffering at the hands of these problems is also important. Like, I felt like I was never necessarily a racist, but I certainly didn't know 1/1000th of the horrific institutionalized racism things that people were encountering, right? Yeah. And I think, like, I'm trying to be better about that. So
you have to keep in mind that people have different thresholds for the amount of weight that they carry.
Yeah, Byron, you just don't recognize when your threshold has been passed and you are a crumbling shell of a human because of it.
I mean, you're only here for so long, Kelly.
I mean, bravo to you for trying to fight the good fight, but I'm just trying to learn more about, you know, these marginalized groups. And,
you know, be aware that emotional energy is a real thing, especially in children. So you don't need to introduce everything out of a responsibility to...
Oh, it's a long-term plan.
Sure.
Yeah.
Unroll it slowly.
Yeah.
You know, crush them.
I mean, I don't even think they know what Nazis were yet.
Good. They're fucking 5.
I got a lot.
Yeah, you don't need to. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a parent, so.
Sam did tell me the other day that the reason he was really into punk was because it wasn't just F Nazis, it was kill Nazis.
See, but that's a personality type.
Yeah, that's definitely my husband's personality.
He's attracted to.
Well, he's attracted to black and white.
Sure.
And he's attracted to
justice, maybe.
Yeah, he is, and like hard lines, lots of hard lines.
I love that guy.
Yeah, I do too.
Weird episode.
Yeah, really weird episode. Okay, this is definitely.
I'm leaving on vacation after this. I got like 3 hours, so
this is going to turn into a 12-parter. Like, I honestly,
I'll just do 5.
9.
9 is German for no.
Yeah, 9 to 5 episodes.
Nope,
because we need 12.
I'm gonna say 9 to that.
That was the worst. You know, a really funny joke in one of the math problems I was helping a kid with today. Population of a city had reached 5,280, parentheses, a milestone.
It's funny because that's the number of feet in a mile.
Yep.
Yeah.
I tried to explain it to the student a few times, and he was like,
"What the fuck,
Kelly, can we just move on?"
Yeah.
I was like, "Yeah, I guess so. Okay,
great."
Fine. Because Al Bielek was slowly uncovering memories in the late 80s, early 90s, if you listen to a series of interviews with him, you'll get different pieces. What's interesting is until the 2000s phase of interviews, things were pretty consistent. Like, there were conversations that evolved and more detail was added, but there wasn't really anything that contradicted what he had previously said. And again, this is like, not evidence, but it's really hard when you're talking that much and that freely. And what's clear is in these interviews, he doesn't have like note cards in front of him. I mean, he's just free speaking,
That's what
right?
Jordan Peterson
That's how he
does,
got himself into Nazis.
Look at what happened to him.
Well,
Lost his
don't
goddamn-
talk.
Okay, sorry.
Talk to me about him.
Sorry.
So some of the things that came out in these interviews, I'd like to just touch on. And it does feel a little bit random, but these are all breadcrumbs that lead to Al's background, Al's knowledge base, and how that knowledge base was both growing at this time and also influenced by the knowledge he already had. In other words, the knowledge he had as a fairly smart electrical engineer. After Edward was sent back to be Al, there was a lot more that happened. In 1953, there was a new test of the same technology that was used in the Philadelphia experiment. No side effects at that point, and this is really when it had morphed into Project Phoenix, which again is what evolved into Montauk. But he said that that is the tech that they eventually used on SR-71,
Which is the
stealth aircraft.
bomber, yeah.
So I'm probably going to need to insert a weapons authenticity there.
Well, instead of that, I'm just going to play Right Now by SR-71.
Oh, I forgot about them. What other songs did they have?
None.
That were famous.
None other.
That was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Admit they are going to be the subject of one of my I Want to Hit Wonder episodes when I finally get to that podcast.
I will totally do that with you.
You want to do that?
Yeah.
All right.
I really will. When asked in an interview, Al also said that John Van Neumann was still alive in 1993. He didn't die in 1957, which is what the records say. And in fact, as Al started to remember all of this, Duncan, his brother, happened to know where Van Neumann was. Edward reached out to him as Al. They are the same person.
Yeah.
Okay. To talk to him. They had lots of conversations. Some of the things that you brought up, Byron, why didn't John Van Neumann stop the brain sweeping? Or why didn't he ask John Van Neumann about the technology? And it turns out that he did ask about this technology when he remembered the existence of Van Neumann and the connection to himself in 1993. At that point, Van Neumann's brain was failing pretty badly. Like he was in pretty rough shape.
He used it a lot.
Yeah. But again, they had to keep him alive through 2003 because he was also part of this 1983 thing, and the whole 20-year biorhythm had to be maintained. Don't ask any more about that. I can't explain any more about that.
Don't worry about it.
There's a point in one of Al's interviews in 1993 where he says, here's some proof there really was something that went down at the Philadelphia shipyards. It was revised to be a federal felony when the federal crime laws were rewritten in 1987 to talk about the Philadelphia experiment on a naval base. You couldn't mention it if you're on a naval base. Now, you are the man who could find that if that's true.
I guess, yeah.
And I will be very interested to hear what you have to say.
Probably not going to do that.
Please do.
We'll see.
So just to be clear, since this is Montauk, Al Bielek's involvement with Montauk was primarily as Al Bielek. The only tangential relationship that Edward Cameron had with Montauk was when he fell through the time hole with his brother, but only fell once. Then he, to the best of his knowledge, stuck around in that time zone until he was baby brainwiped. Okay? Byron, are you following? Does this make sense?
Sorry, yeah, I'm just reading about the singer of SR-71 and how he's now like a major producer. He did Demi Lovato's last album.
Oh, I thought you were going to tell me he was a Nazi.
Nope,
I'm
not
so
Nazi.
glad he's not a Nazi.
Hey, he's making good pop music, apparently.
Amazing. Stanton Friedman,
Heard of him.
our friend Stanton.
Rest in peace. It's
Rest
only
in
been a couple
peace.
years at this point,
I
right?
know, it is very sad. I miss him. We should have gotten an interview with him.
Probably should have, but he went out, at a convention. I don't know if you're
Did he?
aware of
I
that.
didn't know that.
On a plane or in a hotel room on his way to a convention.
That's so perfect.
Died doing what he loved.
That reminds me of my grandfather dying. Well, he died in a hospital, but the catalyst was a heart attack on a
Tractor?
lawn mowing tractor on his golf course.
I remember that.
Yeah, it's good when people go out in ways that feel
Doing what they love.
true to them.
Yeah.
Stanton Friedman did not buy any of what Al was saying. And in return, Al said, well, Stanton Friedman is just a government disinformation agent. Now, Al was not the first, nor would he be the last to accuse
Do you think
Stanton of
it's
such
because
things.
Stanton is an Ashkenazi Jew?
Oh, God, I didn't even think about that. Of course he is.
Okay, let's continue.
Oh, God.
Let's continue.
Oh, my God.
You're fine.
I just had this weird out-of-body experience, realizing that maybe the simulators...
No, okay. We got to roll.
I'm sorry.
We got to go.
I'm sorry. Another thing that Al Bielek claimed was, Byron, this is getting a little bit more into nerd zone, but the claim was that Einstein never completed the unified field theory. There are a bunch of notes that people have tried to work on since then, and Al says, not true, he did, and that finished work was what the government used to do a lot of the things that they did in the 40s and 50s and so on. Because callers to some of the programs that he was a guest on, most notably Art Bell, asked fun questions. Somebody called up and said, hey, if you can time travel, who shot JFK?
They will not stop talking about JFK.
Yeah.
Did President Kennedy's death have anything to do with this?
I'm sorry,
And
President who's?
the assassination of President Kennedy. Was that involved with the government, any part of this experiment with either bringing him back or...
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, and as for going into the future, is his death ever solved?
Is his death ever resolved?
Solved.
Solved. That's pretty well solved now. I don't think one has to go much further into the future because enough records have been released, enough movie films to fairly well nail it down.
Right. Thank you, caller. And to pursue this just a little bit, why would it not be possible, Al, to go back and stop the assassination?
That's a good question.
Those listeners are coast to coast.
Yeah, well, they're right, because it is the most tenable.
I mean, yeah.
You know that Lee
It
Harvey
wasn't
Oswald...
as simple as...
No. You want to hear what Al's answer was?
Sure. I think I probably did hear it already. I listened to that whole thing looking for a clip while you ignored me at dinner.
I didn't ignore you. Believe me, I was just trying to make sure.
You were about to tell us who shot JFK, and you got interrupted. Please tell us who shot him and why.
All right, stop. Who shot JFK, Al?
Best testimony and enhanced pictures taken as a brooder in other films indicate that it was done by the driver.
Oh, yes, that theory. That the driver did it, sir.
Okay.
The driver.
He said the driver did it.
The driver. So the driver was one of the assassins. There were other assassins, like on the Grassy Knoll and a couple other places, but it was actually the driver's shot that killed him.
I have heard that theory before.
Another person, because of the timing of this, he'd mentioned that George Bush was a pawn of the New World Order. Somebody called up and asked, well, why did he lose in the second term then? Why didn't he get a second term?
Ex-President George Bush is a part of the New World Order. Why did he allow himself to lose the election?
Al's response, just a pawn. Again, just a pawn. And in fact, they needed to get Clinton in because Clinton takes orders as well.
Well, he's a Bohemian Grove attendee.
Yes.
Same with his wife.
Yes. Now, Byron, what can you tell me about the Committee of 300?
I don't know anything about the Committee of 300.
Really?
No.
I don't know much about it either. It seemed like one of those possibly Nazi-related things that maybe you had researched and knew something about. So I actually didn't. I just have a note on there that says,
Ask Byron
about this one.
No, I don't know anything about this.
Oh, no.
Also known as the Olympians. You know, I don't lean too much into conspiracy theory, Kelly.
Pizzagate?
Well, no.
Frazzle drip?
I'm more interested
Adrenochrome?
in the fallout around conspiracy theories. Modern conspiracy theories. I don't care about the stuff from 1727. Talking about British aristocracy? Don't know much about it. But what?
Well, he said that the Committee of 300 has a lot to do with who's pulling the strings and also with what's going on and what had gone on at Montauk and at Philadelphia. Now, the interviewer who asked Al Bielek the questions that led to his Nazi disclosure also asked him, all right, well, if they have to keep you alive until 2003, what happens if you walk out of this interview right now and you get hit by a car? Al went on to recount a number of stories of near-death experiences that sounded very similar to a Final Destination film. A car wreck that he narrowly avoided. There was a time in July of 1996 that he almost was on flight TWA 800.
Sure.
And would have died.
I got on the plane, I sat down, and started getting this uneasy feeling. I said, something's wrong. Something's going on. I don't know what it is. And I looked around, didn't see anything unusual, and the plane was running a little late. I happened to look out the window to my right, and over in another bay, there was a lineup of several 747s. And I looked over there, and I said, one of those 747s, or a 747, is going to be a problem. That night, TWA 800 came down.
So you were actually at the airport?
Yes, I was at the same airport.
Wow.
At the same airline.
And you just had a strange feeling?
Yeah.
Very odd.
Good afternoon. We'll update the TWA crash story and join the Oprah Winfrey Show in a couple of minutes. First, the very latest on the crash of Flight 800. Federal safety officials and the FBI and New York City law officials have been all over the scene in the Atlantic Ocean, some 10 miles south of East Moriches on Long Island. There have been reports from a New York congressman that one of the plane's flight recorders had been found, but investigators so far are denying that report.
He has some very interesting, of course, not verifiable stories about near-death experiences. And it turns out, Byron, he did make it to 2003.
He went further than that, though.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Again, who knows? Maybe it's true that they had to keep him alive.
Or that it's just likely that he would live beyond a certain age.
I don't know. That man and what he was into. So while Al Bielek certainly is going to come into the rest of our story, I think now is an appropriate time for us to switch over.
We made it, guys. Into
the world of Preston Nichols, because Preston Nichols is not the linchpin for the Philadelphia experiment, but he is the linchpin for the Montauk Project. Al Bielek is the bridge, if you will. I mean, and Duncan, I guess, because the two of them zip
sure
through the hole. Who is Preston Nichols? Well, Preston Nichols...
Is he just one person the whole time?
Yes.
Good. That's great.
Yes.
That's really exciting news.
We've got a singular, for the most part, timeline regarding Preston Nichols. Now, Preston Nichols, like Al Bielek, a radio electronics engineer, technician, worked for Brookhaven National Laboratories and also for a defense contractor known as AIL. Now, while Byron looks up AIL so that he can give you guys a really quick summary of what AIL actually is, it is important that I note in the first book, The Montauk Project, Experiments in Time, written by Peter Moon and Preston Nichols. Also, Peter Moon has a real name. That's his pen name, but that's for another part. He says that he worked for BJM, when in reality, he worked for AIL. Now, if you notice, BJM are the letters in the alphabet that come after A and I and L.
Shifted one space there.
Yep, that was his code. Pretty nifty code, eh?
Based in Deer Park, New York. It's a subsidiary of Eaton Corp in Cleveland, Ohio.
They're a government defense contractor.
What do you think they did?
They built scary weapons for the government.
Nice.
Eaton government contracts. There's a lot more under Eaton.
We could just give them a call.
Are you going to call them?
Well, their website's down, though, defense.itt.com, so obviously, like you said, weapons, but...
You can read a lot at eaton.com about their parent company and what they do. Obviously, they're not going to let the real stuff on there. They're pretty scary people.
Does it matter too much?
Well, it matters because what this goes to prove is that Preston Nichols was involved in at least somewhat top secret government stuff. Okay. He was working at both of those places at different times. And I think the way that he talks about the electronics is similarly impressive to the way that Al talks about them. However, the surrounding information is presented in a slightly less believable manner. That said, we do stick to a single timeline, which makes his story a little easier for some people to believe.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
What?
Well, Airborne Instruments Laboratory is what AIL stands for.
Ooh. Tell me more, Byron.
I mean, this is all going to be very biased information based around Preston Nichols, but it appears it's just confirming or saying that it confirms that he's a part of a group of scientists working under that name at Harvard, developing radar systems, radar countermeasures, stuff like that.
Bottom line is, the group he worked with was a defense contractor for the U.S. We can get into a lot of theories about exactly what they were doing, and I can tell you that Preston specifically said he was working on the analysis of foreign technology at an Air Force base. Oh, no, you've got something. Go for it.
I'm just annoyed so that they're linking me to AIL.com, which is under construction, which is not usually what government contracting websites.
Well, AIL may have expired at this point because it was a subsidiary.
Why would it be under construction instead of available to purchase,
Oh, that's a good point. Maybe because they don't want to make it available for purchase, because if it was ever a subsidiary of a government contractor, even for non-nefarious reasons, they probably wouldn't want that up for...
Just put up like a landing page of some sort.
I mean, old people in the government aren't great with tech.
It looks like it went down sometime in early 22.
Oh, really?
So it was available from...
Oh, you way back in it?
I did. 1999 through 2008, and then went offline until 2014. Is that when Stranger Things started?
It is. Okay, hold on. Can you go to the 2008 version?
Of course I can. It goes to Global Technology Reach, EDO Corporation, in 2008.
And I think that must be Eaton.
Mm-hmm. Does appear that way.
And so that's legit, though.
Corporate overview, it appears to be.
Byron, give us a little bit of a summary of that.
I'm not giving you any more information. It's completely unnecessary. You're just trying to verify Preston's legitimacy, and I disagree with it. He looks like he could be Don Vito from Viva La Bam. Okay, he met Bielek before Bielek got fired at a comic book store or something.
No, he didn't. That's not true.
I don't buy it.
That's not true.
I don't buy it.
They both knew Sanderson.
Sure, whatever.
Regardless, AIL was a legitimate defense contractor, and weird stuff happened at Brookhaven Nuclear Laboratories. Right? Are we good?
Sure. Yeah, okay.
Preston Nichols said he was working for this specific defense contractor and was analyzing foreign technology, which included...
Okay. I mean, some of the stuff that they are talking about on this website: aircraft weapon interface systems, underwater mine countermeasures, electronic warfare, C4, antenna technology, sonar systems, pre-flight test equipment.
Those are the public things they're talking about.
Yeah.
So very intense.
Sure.
Scary people.
Well.
Ugh. It is speculated that the unnamed Air Force base that Preston Nichols was examining UFOs at was none other than Wright-Patterson, one of the most famous UFO hotspots within our military UFO history. He tells stories, and again, I don't know who was uncovering his memories for him, because he was uncovering memories for everybody else, but at this time he was also starting to come into understanding of his own.
Do you think they worked at like a Radio Shack together?
Okay, no, there was some weird, obscure, normal electronic piece that was used in this technology, and he called and like bought all of the ones that Radio Shack had in their warehouse after they went out of business.
Interesting.
He told that story. I thought that was interesting.
Interesting.
Ooh, what else?
I can't. This is just for you.
What is it?
So it looks like the Committee of 300 might actually be the counter to the New World Order, like the Illuminati, because they are 300 the leaders in the business world rather than the Jews.
Oh, so it is a straight up uber anti-Semitic thing.
Yeah.
We should probably include that.
Yeah, I guess probably.
He references the Committee of 300, which is another crazy anti-Semitic conspiracy theory.
Yeah, it appears to be the anti-Semitic counter to the Jewish cabal.
Awesome. So they're like Q.
That's more complicated than I'd like to get into right now.
Okay. Well, Preston Nichols apparently investigated UFOs himself when the government asked him to try and figure out how they worked. These are some memories that came back over time, and he didn't disclose all of this right away. He also loved to reference, especially in early interviews, there were pieces he was not allowed to discuss because of an NDA that he signed. Now, I don't know if that was an NDA with AIL and Eaton or if it was an NDA with the government. It was very weird. There would just randomly be points where I can't say.
Can't NDAs be broken if it involves a crime?
I don't know. Some of them are specifically surrounding crimes. I mean, you can have an NDA surrounding a settlement for a crime,
Yeah.
you know, like our old president. What's her name? Stormy.
Well, we know exactly how much she got.
How much did she get?
$100,000.
That's just like nothing.
Well, and then she had to give it back because she broke her NDA.
Hopefully she made more.
Off of the book she wrote? Yeah, maybe. She's hosting a YouTube ghost hunting show right now, so I don't think she's doing very well.
I would host a YouTube ghost hunting show.
Yeah, but the thing is, you could, just like she is.
Well, maybe we should do that.
Okay.
One specific UFO that Preston saw, he described as being 50 feet in diameter, 20 feet tall, 3 legs that came out from the bottom that supported it. Byron, if you look, there's a little figure on my desk right here.
Oh, I do see that. Yeah. Is that a replica of it?
Uh-huh.
You need to go on vacation.
It isn't a replica of that. It just happens to match the description absurdly well.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird, actually. One of the things that Preston mentioned about this was that when he went inside the UFO, it was much bigger than it seemed from the outside. Like, literally, it was thousands of feet big on the inside.
Kevin Bacon house.
Oh my God, I just realized. This just hit me right now. Byron, literally the best part of The Abyss was the extended scene that you didn't get to see.
Thank goodness, right?
Because it's like this. We'll get to that. He goes inside and suddenly it's not the, 50 feet diameter that it looked like from the outside, but it's almost limitless. And the idea is that they had encountered an artificial reality. So they were just wearing Oculus when they went in, apparently is the thing.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense. Oculus on a treadmill. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. No controls, no knobs, no levers, and that's a pretty common description as well. Quite apparent that when a person or creature was reclined in the lounge chair, it was designed to pick the thoughts right out of the head. This is how Preston discussed the pilot's chair in the cabin, if you will. And the idea is that chair, whether conscious or subconscious, became the prototype for a chair that Preston would create that would go down in infamy as the holder of all the Montauk boys.
And what do they call that chair?
The Montauk chair.
Yeah, right. It's not as ominous as I was expecting.
I know. I feel like that's probably a good breaking point because...
I've reached mine.
You have not.
No, but you're getting there.
I know. Next up, we are going to explain the Montauk chair. We're going to explain how Preston Nichols found himself in the middle of the Montauk project. And we're going to explain a little bit about what supposedly happened to those poor Montauk boys with some testimony from our core players that you've already been introduced to, in addition to some more peripheral players, including a gentleman by the name of Stuart Swerdlow. Yeah, I feel like Byron's been waiting for the Swerdlow.
Swerdlow makes me mad. Swerdlow is like my least favorite.
See, Nichols I hate way more than Swerdlow.
Yeah, well, we'll get into that next episode. Kelly, thank you so much for that report.
Oh my gosh, you're so welcome.
What a delight.
It was a delight.
I can't believe we had to cut 20 minutes of tangents because for some reason you and I, our worlds have merged in an interesting way.
Yeah, I feel like what we're doing at this point, Byron, is if we are covering the world around us, I'm covering the two extremes, boring normal and absolute bananas Montauk.
Yeah.
And then you're covering like
the meat
and
the cheese
in the middle.
Because 4 slices isn't enough.
I've got
and
the
I'm
mayo and I've got the ranch.
Al, you're fired.
Al doesn't get fired.
He got fired a lot. I can't wait to talk about it. But we got to squeeze in a little vacation before then. I'm not sure what kind of disruption. I don't think there's going to be much. I think you and I did a pretty good job of spacing out some stuff.
Yeah.
Kelly, until next one, where are you going to be?
I'm going to be on...
I heard they canceled your protest.
Which protest?
You know, the one in D.C.
My God, did it get canceled?
Well, I mean, they did it. They just drove around the Beltway for a bit.
And then they left?
I don't know if they've left.
Oh my God, I'm not going to have to deal with it. That's amazing.
Well, how are you going to get back? Wasn't that your ride down?
Oh, stop it.
All right.
Stop it.
You're going to be in D.C.
I'm going to be in D.C., and then I'm going to be on email, kelly@frightday.com, Twitter @KellyFrightday. Sometime one of you will actually care enough about me to send an email to help me with research.
Well,
someday.
They just like normal talking to you. And I'm at Byron McKoy on Twitter and Instagram. Byron@frightday.com is my email address. And until next Frightday, I'm Byron.
I'm Kelly.
Don't sympathize with Nazis. On this week's episode of Behind the Screams, while we take a second to consider your thoughts on IFC Midnight Madness, we're giving you our commentary of an underwater sci-fi classic, a cinema autopsy of James Cameron's The Abyss. That'll be available Wednesday, March 23rd at patreon.com/Frightday or cult.frightday.com. Join the FDS now to get access to over 60 episodes of Behind the Screams, as well as bonus episodes of Byron's Serial Corner, The Writer's Room, Toast to Toast PM with Wine Kelly, Captain Kelly's Cryptids and Conspiracies, as well as the first 10 episodes. Cult.frightday.com. We'll see you Wednesday. You've been listening to an Audio Wool original, produced by Byron McKoy, theme music provided by Cemeteries. For more programs like this, visit audiowool.co.